9 o'clock. All right. Hello, Facebook world. Sorry, I'm probably loud. Hopefully, you guys can hear us okay. I hope we're going to give a couple seconds here, let people join in. Most people know 9 o'clock we go live. This is the last week that we will only be going live on Facebook. Next week, we'll also go live on YouTube. Apparently, YouTube has some extra steps we have to go through, and I didn't know. So that's okay. But for those of you who don't know, my name is Chris Comstock. I get to serve as a pastor here in Georgia. And I'll introduce my guest here in just a minute, Miss Colleen. It's going to be a good night tonight, and I hope you guys are gonna. I think you guys are going to really enjoy it. But let me share with you a little bit of the vision as to why we do what we do here. We, in a couple weeks back, probably about 2 months ago now, have experienced just a lot of tension in our world. And because of that, I just started pouring into scripture, and God really kind of wrecked my soul over a particular passage. And it's this passage in Mark 2. I want to read just a little bit of it and explain why it wrecked me. It said, soon the house where Jesus was staying was so packed with visitors that there was no more room, even outside the door. And while he was preaching God's word to them, 4 men arrived carrying a paralyzed man on a mat. They couldn't bring him to Jesus because of the crowd, so they dug a hole through the roof and they lowered the man on his mat right down in front of Jesus. And let me tell you why that wrecked my thinking. It wrecked my thinking because the men who carried the paralyzed man knew nothing of that man's sorrows. They knew nothing of his hurts, and yet they acted anyways. They wanted to learn. They wanted to be a part of what he was experiencing. And even though it didn't make sense to them, and even though they didn't know it, they wanted to walk alongside of him and carry him as far as they could to get to Jesus. And I believe firmly that the way that we're going to begin to find restoration and healing in our land is to have conversations, to be able to walk alongside people that don't look like us, think like us, act like us, and learn and grow and be challenged to really open our worldview up a little bit. So why do we call it Back Porch Conversations? It's really easy. You don't invite just anybody to your back porch. You invite only people that you want to see all your junk and all your mess and all of your house and all of your crazy, and you bring them to your back porch and you have open and honest dialogue. Normally on the back porch, you're not hiding stuff. You're not fake. You're genuine and you're real with people. And so we want to do the same thing. Over the course of however many weeks God opens this door for me, we're going to continue to bring on different people every single week in different walks of life, different ministries, different life styles and everything to really shape and mold, hopefully, who we are and who we can become, because we need to understand that everybody doesn't have the same life experiences. Everybody doesn't have the same life, that we've all been raised and trained and grown differently. And we have to understand that we all come with our perspectives. And unfortunately, for some of us, we only live in what we think is the right world, which is our world. And that's not everybody else's world. Just because you haven't experienced something doesn't mean it's not real. If you've never ridden a roller coaster, it doesn't mean that roller coasters aren't real just because you haven't experienced them. And so we're going to take that same truth to light today. Just because Colleen's life experiences are not your life experiences doesn't mean that hers are any less valid or real. And so we want to make sure that we walk in humility to learn and to grow alongside other people, other believers, people who are just like us. I firmly believe in this shirt that equality is greater than division. And we have to begin to realize that everybody is equal in the eyes of God. They've all been created in his image. And now we get the opportunity to really practice that, to love others the way that we want to love ourselves, and to see that equal is greater than division. So with all of that in mind, we believe that this conversation is important. The people who come on this every single week believe that this conversation matters and that we need to be having it week in and week out. We need to be having this conversation. So I'm committed every Thursday night to be right here on my back porch or on a back porch somewhere to have these conversations with people. And let me tell you, we've got people booked up through the end of July already. We've got people waiting past that. We're going to keep this conversation going, and we're going to talk about why we think that's so important at the end of this. But for right now, I want to pivot from me because I am committed to believing that this conversation is not about me. It's about everybody else, because my opportunity tonight is to learn. is to grow and to learn from who I think is somebody that is worthy of learning from, somebody who's living this exact practice day in and day out, learning from others, growing, and figuring out how to live life in a brand new way every single day. And I'm excited. Colleen, you are one of my dear friends. We share a lot of dear friends together. We've served alongside of each other. We served each other from a distance, and we served each other with each other in Baltimore, even for the last 3 years. And we're not just talk. We are, you especially, are living proof of what living in difficult circumstances can look like day in and day out. So I want to pivot. I want to pivot and talk to you. So tell us a little bit about your story. Tell us who you are, what you're doing now, how you got there. I know you came all the way from the Midwest in Kansas to the big city of Baltimore. So tell us a little bit about your story and how God got you there.
I did. So I grew up in Kansas. I tell people that before I knew who God was, He was preparing me for this crazy life that I'm living now. My story is not the same, but very similar to the story of a lot of the people that I touch in my ministry. Broken family, divorced parents, alcoholic, drug addicted, abusive in every possible way, father, in and out of jail, mom who left, grandparents raising me. I mean, the whole 9 yards. And so I grew up just in this very broken environment, went to college, went to a 2-year college, graduated with my associate's degree, went to a university, and very quickly realized that, like, if I stayed where I was, God was going to, or not God, but like my life was going to be crazy. And I probably would have ended up a lot like my parents. And so I just started looking for a nanny job because a friend of mine had taken a nanny job in California. And so I just began to search because I was like, well, this is my quick way out. It's a 1-year commitment. I'll just move to wherever for a year and then I'll come home and life will be perfect. And so I got on an airplane to Baltimore, well, to the Baltimore area with a journal, a plan, and one suitcase. Now, I could not move with one suitcase. I do not have a plan because I have learned that my plans are not the plans that God has for me. And God very quickly changed my life. I mean, I accepted Christ on a youth retreat when I was 22. And then God brought me to this crazy place in Tampa, Florida, to do ministry in a very dangerous, rough neighborhood. And when I was there, like, I really felt this calling on my life. And from there, I went to Philly and St. Louis and Los Angeles and really thought that I was going to move to LA. And every time I got close, God just slammed the door. And so, yeah, I met a pastor in the Baltimore area and I just really fell in love with inner city Baltimore. Like, the people that others lock their doors when they drive by the neighborhood or they find themselves here or that they find dirty or don't want to be associated with are the people that I love and love hard. And God has brought me into some different neighborhoods in Baltimore where I look nothing like my neighbors. I look nothing like the people that I love and I serve. And He has just done an incredible work of redemption in my own life and brought me to this place where I get to experience life through really a different lens, in a different place, in a different culture.
Yeah, that's so good. And you've been there for almost 10 years now, serving in East Baltimore alongside Captivate Church, but really working in what's called GEM Ministries. And we're going to talk about that here in a few minutes. But let's talk about, I think sometimes we only think, I don't want to say that, maybe just share your experience, because I think we can think that maybe only racism happens one way, but I think we would all agree that I think we all kind of have our own biases we bring to the table. And so share a little bit for you, like, when did you realize racism was real? And how did you react to that? How did that change you?
Yeah. I think that I always knew that racism existed. I don't think that I always saw it maybe necessarily as racism. I actually did a live yesterday with a friend of mine who took over my Instagram, and I told her, I was like, I used to be that person who said, oh, I don't see color. Color doesn't matter. Yeah. But really, like, it does. When you say that, you're stripping away someone else's, their makeup, their being, their
identity,
culture.
yeah.
And so I was that person. And so I had seen racism. And, I think what the racism that we see now that is really prevalent and like that we're seeing so much is racism towards our Black friends. But when I first moved into this neighborhood, I would get pulled over at least once a week. What are you doing here? Like, you don't belong here. Like, you must be buying drugs. You drive a nice car. And every week I was like, no, I live here. I live here. I live here. To the point that some nights, like, the police would follow me home and watch me come into my home just to like prove that I live here. And even when I moved in, I won't like outwardly say that it was necessarily racism, but there was this like stigma that like white people don't move into this neighborhood. They don't live here, they don't work here, they don't do anything here. And so the kids were very, very like, who is this woman? Like, she's moving in, she must be an undercover police officer. And it wasn't until my house was raided at 4:30 in the morning and my house is destroyed like you would see on TV that they were like, no, like, she really is like us, like, she's not leaving. And like, someone got murdered outside my house and I still didn't leave. And so they started to see that like I wasn't just this white person who was coming in to like be the snark of the neighborhood to the police, but like I really genuinely like had a purpose to be here and wanted to be here. Like, I chose to be here. Like, God called me here, but I chose to follow that.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note, like, I think it's so pivotal for what you did, that you didn't just come in, and we're going to really dig into this in just a few minutes, but you didn't just come in to try to like flip the neighborhood. You just came in to love the people. And really what shifted, at least what I've seen in your ministry style, what shifted their perspective of you was when you began to just love them for who they were. You didn't try to change them. You didn't try to give them anything. You just tried to care and love and give them Jesus, give them hope. And I'm always in awe of your ministry because I just see how God has used you to change that community in such a powerful way. And I just love it. So let's dig into some challenges and experiences that you've had along the way. What I remember most, 5 years ago, I think about 5 years ago, you and I met for the first time, and we both knew your pastor, Tali. He's a great guy, and so he had connected us to come and do a mission trip for you. And I was at that time at a church in South Carolina, a small little kind of suburban church, rural church, good group of kids, but just very, hadn't really experienced life, if you want to be honest about it. A lot of them hadn't been out of South Carolina before. And so you and I had a conversation before I came up, and you said, hey, I really hope your team recognizes that they're not coming up to be the white saviors in this community, but they're coming up to give our students Jesus, to be the hands and feet of Jesus. So let's dig in for a second to this white savior idea. How dangerous is it for us really as white people to think, well, I'm just going to come in and save the day for all my Black friends. I'm going to be the one who just everybody's going to look back and say, look at Colleen, she changed the world. You know what I mean? How do we go about combating that? And what should our posture be when we're coming into this learning experience and this opportunity to serve, whether it's in Baltimore or across the world? What do you think? I mean, tell me, because I just love the way that we talked about it, and I want you to share.
Yeah. I think that God really had to do some work in my heart too, because I think in all of my ministry opportunities that he's given me, in the very beginning, when I was new to all this, had this idea that, I'm going to teach them so much about the world.
Yeah.
But the reality is God humbled me very quickly and was like, you are not their savior. I'm their savior. You are here to learn from them. And that's just the mindset that I've kind of set myself in, is like, yes, I want to teach them, but I want to learn from them too. And I think that one of the things that just irritates me, even now, like, I'm really struggling with all of these pictures that I'm seeing posted of all these white people taking selfies with their Black friends at all these protests, because it's not about going and taking a picture and saying, oh, look what I did, or coming to Baltimore on a missions team. Take pictures, but don't post them on your social media and brag about what you did that week. Talk about what God did in your heart that week. Talk about what you're taking home with you that made you different. Wow. Don't use my kids as like, oh, look what I've done with my life, because that's not what you're coming here for. And I think I had a real reality check one summer. When teams used to come, we used to go on like kind of like a prayer walk through the neighborhood, and I never really thought anything of it other than like, I want my neighbors to see them. I want them to see my neighbors. Like, I want to pray for our week. I want to be in the neighborhood. But my kids sat me down and they were like, Miss Colleen, how do you think it feels for us when a whole bunch of white people are walking through our neighborhood?
Yeah.
And that particular night, a bunch of kids from the neighborhood like walked behind us and were like, look at all those vanilla people walking through our neighborhood. And it never, like, I never had a moment before that of like, wow, like, it's kind of like I'm parading them through the neighborhood to like take in like all what's around them. But that was never my intention, but that's how it was perceived. We stopped that week. I was like, we will never do this again. Will we pray in my neighborhood? Absolutely. Will we be present in my neighborhood? Absolutely. But we will not walk up and down the streets as a whole group of white people taking over this neighborhood. Because the reality is, when a whole cluster of white people come to the neighborhood, everyone knows where they're going. They're coming to me. Like, and they're pretty quickly identified as like they're safe because that's where they're going. But now it's like we have an understanding. We respect each other. Like, it's not, oh, you're going to come for 1 week and change the world, because the reality is you're not. You're going home. And there have been some people who've come and have done some real damage to my ministry that I've had to fix. And so I'm very, very, and some people probably see it as like, wow, she's just being mean. But I'm extremely protective of what God has given me here, because I realize that this is a gift that he's given me. He has given me an opportunity to learn so much about the world from the people that he's put me around who look different than me.
That's so good. Yeah, I know we had a long conversation on Monday about that particular topic, and I will say I'm excited in some levels about the response of so many to be a part of what's happening, whether it's peacefully protesting or doing those things. But I agree, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this at the end. But it is frustrating to feel like they're almost following a trend rather than being part of the change. And my hope and prayer is that that's not the case. That what we're seeing now is a genuine shift in transition, to see people genuinely like passionate about standing alongside our brothers and sisters of all colors to say we're going to fight for you till our dying breath, because that's what God's called us to do, because that's what Jesus did. And he did that, and he died for every single color on that cross, and he didn't care. He loved and breathed into life into each one of them on purpose. And I just firmly believe that we have a great opportunity. So with that in mind, you equally had a great opportunity in some ways, because now you've kind of gathered together this ministry in Baltimore that you call GEM, which stands for Gospel, Education, and Mentorship, right?
Mentoring, yes.
I didn't write it down. I should have wrote it down. It's in my head. All right. So Gospel, Education, and Mentoring. And I love this ministry because you are committed to every week presenting the gospel to these kids and reminding them of how much Jesus loves them. You're committed to helping them in their education and helping them continue to grow and learn, even if they're struggling. And you give them a mentor, which is incredible. And it's really, I think, just a model that ought to be hopefully enacted in more cities. But for you, it's a little bit bigger than that, because one of the students that came now is your son. And so talk a little bit about the challenges that you face now with Peter, and the struggle that you've had just in growing and learning, and now being a white mom to a black boy, and talk a little bit about how that's transformed who you are and the way you think and the way that you have grown through that.
Yeah, it is hard to be a mom to a black child when you're black. It is really, really hard to be the mom of a black child when you're white.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that either one is harder or different. I mean, harder, but they're different. And so for me, I've heard from so many people, like, how are you going to raise him? You don't know anything about like how it is to raise a black kid. How are you going to love him? Blah, 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 blah. But the thing is, like, I love him because he's a child of God, and he's the gift that God gave me through his parents. And so it has been challenging. Even like walking alongside his dad until the very end, and like his dad asking me like, how are you going to raise my son? How are you going to love him? What are you going to teach him? And having to assure him that like Peter is my heart and my soul and like my best interest, but like knowing that he could walk out my front door tomorrow and not come home because of the color of his skin. We have to have very hard conversations of, please don't walk out of the house with a wad of money in your pocket, because I know you're a good kid, but God forbid they stop you and pull you over and then you have these $20 bills in your pocket. They've already made an assumption about you. Or, you know, I'm teaching him how to drive right now, which I don't know what's more scarier, like teaching him how to drive or the conversations that I have to have with him about what happens if the police pull you over? What do you do? What do you say? How do you act? Like, where do you put your hands? How do you move? Like, it literally sometimes brings me to tears to think that, like these are not conversations that my white friends are having with their kids. Like, it's just not. It's not a conversation at the dinner table. You're like, man, another one of your friends died this week, or another one of your friends got arrested, or you got stopped in the park because a bunch of white people decided that you were walking in a group to the basketball court and you might be dangerous. And it is, I think for me, both a humbling experience, a learning experience, and I actually recorded a podcast a couple weeks ago, and I said, I think one of the hardest things that I'll ever do with my life is to raise a Black teenage boy in this culture that we live in, because it is hard. And like, I want to shelter him. Like, I don't want him to leave the house. Like, I don't want him to walk to the park. I don't want him to leave the front porch. I want all of his friends to come here and hang out, because he would kill me if he heard that. Hang out, because like, at least I know where they are and they're safe. And I think the advantage I have is that I have created this safe space through my ministry and like my kitchen window and my home, that the kids desire to come to my house. So I do have that advantage of like, oh yeah, they're going to come here because this is their safe table where we can play games and talk and eat and hang out and have very, very real conversations about the things that happen outside my front door or even in the world. Like, I remember when Michael Ferguson happened and Freddie Gray, and even now, like, the conversations we have, they're so real. And they're like, they could be, I mean, it could have been my teenage boy who was killed running through a neighborhood. It could have been my teenage boy who was killed, like, because the police decided to treat him a certain way. And so that's something that constantly runs through my mind. But it's also like such a gift to me, because I think I view the world differently because of where I live, the life that God's given me, and this gift of a child that like I didn't know I was going to have.
Yeah, your worldview definitely changes. I was talking to a friend of mine just this week who is adopting a little Black boy, and was saying, man, I'm going to have these conversations about the fact that this exists, and that stinks. Mm-hmm. Like, that's so gut-wrenching to know that is so palpable and so real. And I know, like, for you, one of the things we did when we came up and served in the city was we had the opportunity to go into the school that you work at and to see the difference in what education looks like. And that's not just, that's a city issue really at the end of the day. It's hard to know because until you walk in the doors and see the libraries are tattered and torn, the classrooms are just, it's not the same. It's not the same. So with all of that in mind, how do you feel like, how do we shift the narrative to help people understand what are ways that we can give people, I would say number one, the biggest thing people can do is to visit, to engage, to learn, to see. Those experiences are life-changing, and you'll learn a lot. Those things don't go away. Like, they will change your life forever. What are ways that you can say, like, if you're, maybe people don't believe you, right? Like, that can't be real, Colleen. What are some ways or some resources that we can give to people to say, like, no, this is real. This is happening right now. This is happening on your front steps. I remember just, when we came up in 2015 and you drove us through the city. You're like, we're not going to get out here because this is where the riots happened. This is where everything kind of went south, and you don't want to do that. And so it's eye opening to see some of those things
Mhm.
and experience that firsthand. So, what are some ways that people can learn and grow? Maybe they can't travel or whatever, but I know we talked about some resources and opportunities to give people to grow. What would you tell people? Like, here's some ways that you can genuinely grow and hopefully expand the horizons of your education in this way.
I think that every city has a Title I school. I mean, I don't know that there's probably any city in the world that doesn't have a school that has a Title I status, and teachers that are buying their own school supplies, and classrooms that are overcrowded. And my friend is a teacher in the same school that I work at, and last year she had 2 kids in her class. One kid's dad killed the other kid's dad. I mean, there's just so much heaviness, but there's also such a great opportunity for us as outsiders to come in and love those schools, to serve, to start a book club, to start a writing club, to hang out, to like sit with the kids at lunch. A lot of those kids don't have 2 parents at home, 1 parent at home being raised by someone else, and to have someone who comes in and just invests in them. And like even the teachers that teach in inner city schools are at such a disadvantage. One, their classrooms are overcrowded. Two, they don't have there's not money to buy school supplies. If you walked into our school right now, you would cry. I mean, there's not really a library. I can't tell you the last time we had new books in that school. There's just so much that happens that can't be controlled because there's not enough staff, because the budget isn't cut, or the budget doesn't allow for it. But also, like, there's neighborhoods like mine everywhere. Like, find a ministry like mine and invest in it. Get to know the people. Don't go in with this like attitude of like, oh, I'm going to go for 1 day a week and change the world, because that's not going to change the world. That's going to do more damage than good. But invest in those people. Get to know them. Hear their stories, because every single kid that comes through my front door and through the door of the church has a story. And some of them are unfortunate stories that they've just been handed a deck of cards that aren't great right now, but there's hope for them, and they need people like us who are investing in them to change the world, to be examples, to get to know them, to let go of those kind of like ideas in your head that you've already made about them. Because my biggest hope is that people would understand that a lot of the kids that I deal with, they're not bad kids. They just don't have people investing hope into them, and that's what they need. They need hope.
That's good. That's good. And I think it is so important for us as we're doing this whole thing to not neglect the opportunity that we have to do that. And I've walked in the school that you're in, and it is gut wrenching to see. And I think it's pretty palpable in inner cities to see that. So I do want to encourage people, like, just to go be a part of something that pushes you outside of your comfort zone. And I think that's so important, because it's so easy for us to live inside of our bubbles, that we have got to find a way to push ourselves out of that and to find a way to grow. One thing that we really pushed into when we were doing our pre-production conversation was that we have got to find a way not to keep this trending longer, not to let the hashtags go on, because at the end of the day, I think both of our prayers is that the hashtags will end, that we will find a time in hopefully our generation or our kids' generation at the latest where we stop having to respond in hashtags negatively.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we get equipped to go beyond the hype of the hashtag? It is easy in this moment to respond with excitement and vigor because something bad has happened, and now we respond to it. Like, oh no, this happened, so we should respond. How do you and how do I respond beyond the hashtag? How do we take those steps to do that?
I mean, I think the first question, and this might hurt some people, but it's just kind of the reality that we live in, is, are you sharing things on your social media? Are you doing things right now because you saw a hashtag and it's what everyone else is doing? Or are you doing it because you genuinely have a heart to change maybe feelings that you have, or ideas, preconceived notions that you have, and you genuinely want to see change. And in a few weeks, when this hashtag isn't trendy anymore and something else is trendy, like, are you going to forget about the things that are still happening? Because they're still going to be happening, whether we see it on the news or social media or in our circle of influence. Like, they're still happening. They've been happening. And I truly, a part of me believes that the only reason why right now this is so escalated is because everyone is in their home right now watching the news. Everyone is seeing what's happening. If this happened 6 months ago, I really, genuinely, truly believe that this would have just been another story that passed by on the evening news and we never heard about it again. Yeah. But now we're all just kind of stuck, and we're in a place where we can learn, we can educate ourselves, we can take the time to have conversations. And the other thing, something that I really love that Jackie Hill Perry says in one of her talks, is you're doing your family and your friends a disservice if you don't invite people into your home and your table that don't look like you. Mm-hmm. I think it's really important that we take a step back and we ask ourselves, like, do I really have Black friends or people of color in my life that look different than me? That I'm not just saying, oh yeah, I know that person, but genuinely like an invested relationship. Are you hanging out with them? Are they sitting at your dinner table? Are your kids playing? Do you have like books in your home that look different than the kids that you're raising or what you look like? Do you have a ministry that you're investing in that people look different than you? Are you going into neighborhoods that look different than yours? Are you advocating for Black-owned businesses? Like, or are you just living in your little suburban bubble? Which I hate to say that, but I even think about, and something that we talked about is like the difference between what a high school graduation or a prom or a birthday or any of those things look like for like my kids versus like white kids who live in the suburbs. Like, my kids for the longest time believe that high school graduation is only something that they see on TV or that white kids in the suburbs do. And that's simply not true. There's just no one pushing them. There's no one saying like, you can do this. There's a song right now by Eric Church. I don't know if you've heard it, but it's called Stick This in Your Country Song. And in the very first line, it talks about Baltimore being boarded up houses and drug deals and guns. And that's the dream that everyone lives for. And how sad is it that that's literally the culture that my kids are living in? They celebrate big at kindergarten, 5th grade, 8th grade graduations because they might not live to see their high school graduation. They might not go to college. They have these, I was literally like, what in the world? The first time I got an invitation to a prom send-off, and it was literally like a full course meal and a party. And it's like, these are things they celebrate because they might not make it to their next prom. They might not make it to their next birthday. And when my teenage boys said to me, when you turn 25 in this neighborhood, you're old. Like, if you make it past 25, it is victory. And that's just the reality. So do you know those things? Like, do you know these facts? Do you know that the high school dropout rate in our city is 44% for African-American males? Like, if not, like, you're doing yourself a disservice because you're not living in the reality of this time.
Yeah, that's so good. I want to end our time by really digging into some opportunities and resources that we can give them tangibly. I want to say, and I feel like I fail to say this every other week, so I'm going to say it this week. If nothing else, a great place to start is the Be the Bridge community. It's an opportunity for you to hop in and learn quietly for 3 months. They've got some like recommended reading they give you. I mean, they empower you to learn. And I think it's a really cool opportunity. And one of the things I'm really excited about, we talked about on Monday, is trying to put together a panel with your Gem boys. I'm going to try to get to Maryland and do that. And I think it's important to see the faces of these people that we're talking about and learn from them directly as well. But beyond that, beyond even what we're doing tonight and these little 30 to 45-minute conversations that I get to have week in and week out with people, what are some resources that on every other day that's not Thursday that people can learn? What are some books or podcasts or movies that you would recommend?
Yeah. Well, I think your greatest resource is the people around you. Like, who do you have in your life? And that doesn't mean, like, this is not me giving you permission to run to all your Black friends and ask them to educate you, because that's not what you should be doing.
It's not
because
their job.
They're exhausted right now. It's not their job, and they have so many other things going on. But they are a great resource and an example to just watch and learn from them quietly. But also, like, if you have those people in your life, like for me, it's my friend who took over my Instagram yesterday. I tell her she's the greatest gift that I didn't know I would need, because she's the biggest advocate for me and cheerleader and person I can bounce things off of as like a mom of a Black child. But like Felicia and like other people, like I learn by watching them, not by bogging them down with my questions, but literally by sitting back and watching their examples. But then there's the book Just Mercy, and right now like Netflix and Amazon and Hulu, they've done the hard work for you. Log on to your Netflix and it says Black Lives Matters movies. There are so many movies right now that you need to be watching to educate yourself. And there's books like this book that I love, that I've read 3 times now, is I'm Still Here, Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness by Austin Channing Brown. And it's about how her parents named her Austin because they wanted people to think that this white man was coming into a business meeting, and then this Black woman walks in and they're shocked, but like they've already read about her and know about how great she is. But how sad is it that that's what they thought? And like there's just so many other books, and I'm taking the Be the Bridge 101 course right now, and I was on the book launch team for Be the Bridge, and I love Latasha Morrison and what she's doing, and I really think she as a Black woman has done the hard work for white people, and that's what she wants to do. She wants to educate her white friends and white people of influence to go out and change the world for their Black friends and the people around them.
Yeah, I agree. Be the Bridge is obviously one of those ones that everybody can trust. I'm going to throw the book in the chat so that way people see it. And if they want to get that book, it is a super important one. I think it's a really powerful one that people can easily get on and read via digital or really anything else. Our whole staff is about to go through Be the Bridge. It's really exciting. And I just love it. I love that at least the conversations are happening. And that we'll stay committed to that and committed beyond the hype of the hashtag. I'm going to make that my new podcast on Tuesdays after the hype of the hashtag. No, that's not true. I can't do more than one of these a week. Listen, Colleen, thank you so much for even giving us, I know, 40 minutes of your time tonight. And thank Peter for being quiet this whole time. And I don't know where he might be out with friends right now, but
I know he's in his room probably rapping his heart out.
There you go. You did a great I listened to your podcast. You should share that on the comment thread as well, which has a sneak peek of Peter at the end. It's so good. I know we haven't talked about it since you sent it to me, but it's so good. And I appreciate your heart just to be a voice and to speak. And I think it's important for us to not be silent, for us to continue to speak, for us to have conversations, because if we know one thing, we know that this conversation isn't going to be short. It's not short-lived. Things don't change overnight. Years and years and years of indifference and years of really oppression that doesn't shift in one night. It shifts over time. It takes time. And so may our silence not grow weary. May we continue to speak, continue to learn, continue to educate ourselves beyond the hype of it all. And remember, this is not a knock on a single part of what we're talking about. We're not trying to down the police. We're not trying to down education or housing. It's all of these things have got to begin to shift. It's not a matter of one thing or the other. We're not blaming one part or the other. This is a movement that we and really, let me speak to Christians, like as Christians, like we have got to take our place as the Micah 6:8 of this world. That we have got to fight for mercy. We've got to fight for justice. We've got to fight for love. And we've got to do it all because that's exactly what Jesus did on our behalf. And he hung on a cross so that you and I, who are Gentiles, could be engrafted into his kingdom. And he did it for everybody. So I just want to encourage us to stay strong, to step up, because a lot of people are tired. They're tired of fighting. They're tired. They're exhausted. And now it's our turn. And it's our turn to be loud. And it's our turn to be a voice. And so I just want to thank you for taking your time tonight. Thank you for your heart. Thank you for your ministry and your love for the city. I'll be back up there soon, loving on those kids again. And I told you to send them down here. We'll take care of them for a few days if you need. I know
I'm about to put some on a plane to you.
Come on down. So,
but I just have one more thing that I just want to encourage. Like, I think that something really important that you can do right now that I left out earlier is that if you do have a person in your life who is Black and who is really running the race right now and really like using their voice and taking care of their family and fighting for justice. Like, love them and love them hard. Like, for me, I sent flowers to a friend the other day because I was like, I see you and I hear you and I'm watching you and I know how hard it is. And yesterday she told me, she was like, some of the greatest gifts that I received right now in this hard time is like, my friend sent me dinner. And she was like, I see you. I know you're working hard. I know you have a family. Like, they like love, like they just need to be loved right now because they are tired and people are like, I mean, I hear this all the time from my Black friends. Like, I'm just getting so many questions. I don't know how to answer them. My inboxes are full. My messenger box is full. And like, yes, it's great, but like they need to be loved. And so I just encourage you, like, even if it's a phone call, a text message, a gift card in the mail, like anything.
Yeah, that's so good. And if nothing else, if you can't go out, you can't be active, you can't do anything else, can I just encourage us all to pray? Because I truly believe that it's a spiritual issue and it's a hard issue. And I truly believe that Jesus is going to be the one to fix it. And that we are just vessels used by him. So may we be committed first and foremost to him and let his justice and mercy flow through our lives to other people. So Colleen, thank you so much again. I love you. I'll be back up there as soon as we can. And I love your boys. I love your whole group, but your boys more than anything else. And so
they're pretty special.
They really are. You guys will see in a couple weeks when we get them on here. These boys are incredible. So let me just say thanks to everybody that logged in tonight. Appreciate you guys sharing it or telling your friends about it. It'll be on YouTube tomorrow. Next week, we'll stream live on YouTube and Facebook. Actually, thankfully to Colleen, who shared this awesome new software with me that does that. And so really excited. Remember that this is a fight worth fighting because it's the fight that Jesus fought, and we're standing in his shoes, and we're pushing forward because we've all been made in the image and likeness of God. And it's important for us to fight that battle. So love you guys. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Colleen, have a great evening. Love you. We're praying for you. And we will see you guys next Thursday. It's going to be a good one. Y'all going to want to be on here, I promise. All right. We'll see you guys then.